And we are in. Boys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going deep down the rabbit hole, and I'm going to talk to you about the parallels between economics and fitness, because there's some principles in economics that, if you understand them, are going to help you to understand fitness and make progress on your fitness journey. So some of this stuff might be a little bit dense, but I'll try to break it down as much as I can. If you've got any comments, questions, if anything isn't clear, leave it in the comments and I'll try and clear it up. So I'll do my absolute best to make it as crystal clear as possible. Now listen, economics was one of my favorite topics at school, but I have to admit I didn't pay a whole lot of attention at AS level. So when I was like 17 years old, because I'd been going to an all boys school, I know, hashtag middle class, right? For 5 years prior to that. So I hadn't really seen or spent any time around women. And so yeah, my attention was elsewhere, but some things did stick. And a little bit like fitness, what I love about economics is that the secret sauce doesn't lie in tactics and methods and quick fixes. It's very much about principles and understanding these principles. And just like the principles that govern our fitness, if you understand the principles of economics, you can transfer them to other areas of your life. So for example, if you're disciplined in the gym, you're more likely to be disciplined at your work. Just a simple example there. But what also is mad is that these principles aren't just transferable, they intersect a lot and they actually explain a lot as well. So let me explain exactly what I mean. So in economic terms, you've got something called a sunk cost fallacy, and then you've got the law of diminishing returns. Now, a sunk cost fallacy describes our tendency to follow through on something even though we're not getting what we want out of it because we're already invested in it. It's effectively us being led by our emotions. So whether or not the cost is outweighing the benefit or not, we just keep going. Imagine, you know, Alice in Wonderland, right? And going down that rabbit hole. She just keeps going, right? And then you've got the law of diminishing returns, which states that after an optimal level of capacity has been reached, adding more will actually reduce the output. So you get to almost like a peak and then it starts to go downhill. And you see this all the time now in like trends on content and stuff like that. People will keep following the trend and they're all blowing up and it's amazing. And then suddenly the world moves on basically, okay? So you've got sunk cost fallacy, you've got law of diminishing returns. I told you this was dense, but I'm doing my best. And the thing about these principles is that they intersect, they meet. Because as the sunk cost increases, so does the likelihood of experiencing those diminishing returns. So think about it this way, because these sort of principles and the fact that they intersect don't just stand true in economics, they stand true with our health, with our fitness, with our nutrition as well. Because think about it this way, how many of us are guilty of continuing with certain exercises or certain diets despite the fact that we don't see results, despite the fact that we hate them, and despite the fact that they might be costing us more than we're getting back from them, okay? Whether that's time, whether that's money, or whatever that might be. And it's all because we've been sold on an emotion. We've been told that we just have to keep doing it and it's the right thing, and we've been sold peace of mind, but the reality is we've been sold an illusion, okay? So that's an example in the fitness world of the sunk cost fallacy. But then equally, how many of us are guilty of giving up because we feel like we've plateaued or even actually started going backwards or going downhill, right? All because we're going into diets and workouts sort of blind without really knowing what to do next. Like we're not really following a program, we're sort of just going through the motions. And in that is the law of diminishing returns, okay? So I know this is dense, but hopefully this is making a little bit of sense. And I'm telling you all of this because it's entirely plausible that the key to overcoming all the barriers you're facing with your fitness or your diet is actually just understanding these principles and then how they transfer to your health. Because these principles, whether you realize it or not, is probably what's driving a lot of your behavior just as a human being. And it's very normal, by the way, because once we can see that, once we understand it, you also realize that you're falling victim to something, and that as a result of that, you can avoid it, okay? So a sunk cost is not a sunk cost if it pays back. And the returns do not diminish if we never plateau. So basically, I guess the real lesson there is as long as you are doing the right thing, you might not get that positive feedback loop as quick as you want. So you feel like you're wasting more time doing the same thing, or you're wasting more money, or whatever it might be. Or you're really scared because you think you could be doing something else. And this is where people get like shiny object syndrome and jump to the next thing. But as long as you're doing the right thing, the result is guaranteed. The return is guaranteed. And that's where they intersect. This is dense. I'm really hoping people have understood this. And the thing is that people love progression. And when we feel like we're standing still, or even worse, going backwards, there's an innate driver in us to try something new. But you have to remember that you don't want to be like most people, because most people are getting this wrong. Literally, like, spend 5 minutes, and don't take my word for it, spend 5 minutes doing any research you want on physical and mental health globally, but it's even worse in the more developed nations, which is kind of more terrifying, like the US and the UK, right? Look at the statistics and the way this stuff is going. It's all going in the wrong direction, and that is what most people are doing. So by definition, you don't want to do what most people are doing. So sometimes it's very easy, because you're doing something different, to think you're doing something wrong. But if you are following a training program, if you're sticking to the basic principles of fitness, the progressive overload, calorie deficit if you're looking to lose body fat, just a couple of examples there, you will get the result. But along that way, it won't be a linear line. You will have mess ups, you will have setbacks, you will have bad days, weeks, maybe even bad months, but you are on the right path. So even though it feels like you're sinking more time, effort, energy, even maybe money into something, you are going in the right direction. And if anything, you actually want to double down. Because the sunk cost fallacy, the last word there is the key word, fallacy. It's false, it's not true. You think it's a sunk cost, you think you're wasting time, you think you're wasting energy. Everything in your head tells you, people around you tell you. But if you're doing the right thing, if you know you're doing the right thing, if you're following the principles, if you're sticking to the basics and you're doing it consistently for a long enough period of time, it's not a maybe, it's a definite, absolute guarantee you will get the result. So this is a hard one. I get this is dense, but you basically just need to ask yourself, are you progressing? And as long as you are in some way, maybe it's not a physical manifestation, you don't look particularly different, but are you feeling different? Do you feel more in control? Do you feel more energized? Do you feel a little bit happier? Take all the emotion out of this and look at it as objectively as you can. And if you're not, then something has to change. But if you are, then you just need to keep going, and if anything, double down. So I appreciate this was dense. I encourage you to go and do some chat GPTing on definitions of sunk cost fallacy and law of diminishing returns. But some of you guys, that might have made perfect sense. I hope it has. If it's helped one person, then ultimately my job here is done. But yeah, I'll leave this video here. Like I say, any questions, any comments? If you think I'm an absolute weirdo, that's absolutely fine. Drop me a comment, let me know. And yeah, I'm keen to have a discussion about this. All right, guys, take care. I'll see you tomorrow.